Hello everybody, I'm Kamalea, welcome to my channel. Great news everybody! Just as I'm getting really sick and tired of the current Hearthstone meta, new cards get revealed. Not too many, but yeah, they started revealing cards and the new expansion is going to come out soonish. So let's take a look at them. Start with this one. I tried to click on them and make them bigger, but I don't know if my computer is having the hiccups right now or if way too many people are rushing onto their servers, but that makes everything slow as hell, so I'll do it like this. The Lesser Jasper Spellstone, 1 mana warrior card, deal 2 damage to a minion, gain 3 armor to upgrade. Now the upgrade mechanic is new in this expansion and works fairly simple. If you have this card in your hand and you fulfill the requirement, this card changes into a stronger version of itself. In this case, first it turns into the Jasper Spellstone, which deals 4 damage, and then it turns into the Greater Jasper Spellstone, which deals 6 damage. I think this card is really good, and I'm quite certain that it will see play, because there are already a bunch of 1 mana deal 2 damage cards, and they see play from time to time. And this card has a slight or not so slight downside over them, that it can only deal damage to a minion. How much of a downside that is depends a lot on what kind of deck you're playing. But it has a huge upside that it can grow. And in this case, the growing happens more or less automatically. It's not that you have to go out of your way to do it. And unless you're a super aggressive warrior, you're going to want to gain armor anyway, from time to time. So this just gets bigger as you are doing things you would do anyway, whether you have this card in your hand or not. Also, this is a good opening card hand. So you probably keep this when you mulligan. So every bit of armor you gain during that game will upgrade this card. And if you play it in the early game to kill a 2-drop, that's already okay to good. And if you don't need it in the early game, then it becomes pretty good when you kill something with 6 health for 1 mana. That's pretty good. Yeah. So the only problem that it has is it's in warrior, but which decks will be good, which classes will be good, that could change completely. So who knows? All in all, I'm a fan. I'm not a fan of this one though, the Lesser Sapphire Spellstone, so the Shaman Spellstone card. It's a 7 mana, summon 1 copy of a friendly minion, overload 3 mana crystals to upgrade. And the upgrading means that the Sapphire Spellstone summons 2 copies, and the Greater Sapphire Spellstone 3 copies of a friendly minion. I don't think that this card is good. I think it's going to be a meme card that you can use to make funny videos, but I think it's actually pretty bad. Because the card on its own is terrible. 7 mana to summon 1 copy of a friendly minion, you can have that cheaper. Now, the overload thing is also problematic because this is not a card you're going to keep on your hand. You're not going to keep this in your hand for mulligan. You're going to throw this out. You're going to draw into it later if you have it in your deck. And that means all the overloading you have done up until that point does not count towards the Spellstone. So you have to draw into this later in the game and then still have enough mana crystal overload cards to upgrade it to then have a positive effect with this card. And I just don't see that happening. The only potential deck I can see this in is some kind of crazy OTK kill deck. But that seems very iffy to me, so I think this is a pretty bad card. The Guild Recruiter, 5 mana 2/4, which is terrible stats, but the battle cry is recruit a minion that costs 4 or less. Now recruit is the next new mechanic, and what it does is it pulls out a minion from your deck and puts that into play. The advantages of that is it thins out your deck. You get more, if you have enough of those cards, you have more effects to thin out your deck, kind of like with patches. Thinning out your deck is not really effective when you have only patches, because that's not much. but the more of these effects you have in your deck, the quicker you can get to your combo cards. Now this is somewhat targeted. That can be an advantage and a disadvantage. The advantage of this is you know what's going to happen, and you can build your deck accordingly. So the ideal scenario is you play this, and all you have in your deck is like Flame-Wreathed Faceless, and you pull that out and you don't get the Overload, which would be awesome. But generally, I think this card is too expensive for its stats. Sure, there are more fringe scenarios, like in Warlock, when you have cards like Succubus or something like that, which is strong cards that cost 4 or less but have a negative effect when you play them. Could be good for those, but I think it's too expensive, too situational, too fringe play, that this is probably not going to see play. Now, Rin the First Disciple. Rin the First Disciple is an interesting card. I think this is again going to be a meme card, one that you can make funny videos with, but it's really, really not good. So it's a taunt, 3/6 for 6, and Death Rattle, add the first seal to your hand. And that is, I think, 5 cards in succession. The first one summons you a 2/2 demon and puts the second seal into your hand. That summons a 3/3 demon and the next seal, and so on and so on. And in the end, you get a 10 mana 10/10 that destroys your opponent's deck. Only his deck, not his hand. He keeps his hand in his hand, but the deck gets destroyed. Now, on first glance, that sounds quite interesting against combo decks. If you can pull this off before your opponent has played his Raza or drawn his Raza or Anduin, that gets destroyed. If you can pull this off before your opponent drew his, whatever the needs for his combo is, if you can get this off before he draws it, you can destroy that and through that pretty much win the game. But I don't think that that's going to happen, because you have to put in so extreme amounts of mana into that. I mean, Rin the First Disciple is a 6 mana 3/6 taunt, which is bad. The first seal is a 5 mana summon a 2/2, which is extremely horrible. Even the last one, summon a 5 mana 6/6, is not good. And the last, summon a 10 mana 10/10, that still, it does nothing on the board. It does nothing against your opponent's hand, and it doesn't have taunt, so it doesn't keep the opponent from simply killing you that turn. And you've dumped a whole lot of mana into that, and that also means that it is extremely slow and takes a lot of turns. By then, it's entirely possible that your opponent has already drawn his key cards. So, interesting idea, but I think it's quite terrible. Carnivorous Cube. Battlecry, destroy a friendly minion. Death Rattle, summon 2 copies of it. And that's for 5 mana, a 4/6. Now this card this is cute. I think this is going to see some play, at least experimentation, and it could be potentially quite good. Especially if you target Death Rattle minions with it, and ideally if you target your own damaged Death Rattle minions with that. So you have Etherean, and you run him into a 5/5, and then you have a 6/1 Tyrion. Now you destroy it, you get the Ashbringer, and as soon as the Carnivorous Cube dies, you get 2 Tyrions. Stuff like that. Obviously, this is very, very, or not necessarily very, very, but it's somewhat risky against everything that can silence. But even then, if you had your minion at pretty much dead, and then you kill it yourself, and otherwise it would just have gotten pinged or AoE'd or something, then you're not losing much. So I think the Carnivorous Cube, I'm really excited for this card. I want to play around with it. The Dry Gulch Jailer. Paladin card, 2 mana 1/1, Death Rattle, add 3 Silverhand recruits to your hand. Now, talking about standard, we don't really have any Silverhand Recruit synergy. Maybe something more is coming, but as it stands, no, not really. And Silverhand Recruits in your hand is really bad because they're 1/1 and you have to pay mana for 1/1s that do nothing else. That's crap. The only advantage of this is for hand buff Paladin, because there obviously if you have more stuff in your hand and you have more cards that buff everything in your hand, that's good. But wouldn't you rather just play something that draws the cards from your deck? I think I'd rather just play something that draws me cards from my deck. That seems better. So I'm really underwhelmed by this card. Kobold Illusionist. 4 mana, 3/3, Death Rattles, summon a 1/1 copy of a minion from your hand. Now this is kind of Barnes-ish. It's the same cost as Barnes. It has 1 less health than Barnes. And it's a bit more targeted. The disadvantage is it can be silenced, because it's a Death Rattle, obviously. Advantage is you have Death Rattle synergy. If you have N'Zoth, this comes back. And summoning something from your hand instead of your deck can be an advantage and a disadvantage. You can influence it more, but if you don't draw the card that you want to copy, then this is bad. So it's hard to say whether this is potentially useful. Personally, I think it could be useful if you have if you have cards that interact with the Death Rattle and you can get additional value out of that. But as it stands, I think Barnes would just be better. Wandering Monster, 2 mana secret. When an enemy attacks your hero, summon a 3-cost minion as the new target. I'm pretty underwhelmed by this. It's another secret for Hunter in the long line of secrets that are really not good enough to be played. Hunter already has some... Sorry. Hunter already has some secrets for 2 mana that summon 3-cost minions, and they pretty much don't see play. This one has the added effect that the 3-cost minion is the new target, which can save you in certain situations. But it summons you a random 3-cost minion. Of course you can high roll, but there are a lot of crappy 3-cost minions. There are a bunch of 3-cost minions that I wouldn't play as 2 mana when I could control it. And here you're summoning a random 3-cost that you can't control, so... As long as you have to pay for it and put it in your deck, that's pretty bad. If you get it for free, cheat it out somehow, yeah, it would be okay, but as it is, no. Aluneth. 6 mana, 0/3 weapon. At the end of your turn, draw 3 cards. And this is a legendary weapon that you can put in your deck as a mage. The thing is, I think every class is going to get 1 legendary weapon. And that in itself can have an impact on how good they are. Because if everybody has weapons and all the weapons are potentially good, that means that stuff like Harrison and Ooze are going to get far more common. As it stands right now, the most common anti-weapon card only takes away 1 durability. So that would survive that. Now, is this card specifically any good? I'm torn. On one hand, drawing 3 cards and potentially drawing 3 cards multiple times sounds extremely good. On the other hand, it could almost be too much, so that you overdraw, and I mean, you're drawing essentially 4 cards per turn. Those have to be very cheap cards if you want to burn them off all of them in that turn, so you don't overdraw, you don't burn your cards drawing them, and you have to win pretty quickly in order not to fatigue yourself. Now, is it possible that Mage could build a deck where that works? Yes. Possible. But I don't think that's very likely. So, I think this is not great. Now the unidentified elixir, I'm going to go over here so that we can see the effects. So the unidentified elixir, 3 mana spell, give a minion +2/+2, gains a bonus effect in your hand. So you draw this, and then it becomes one of these, the elixir of hope, of life, of purity, or of shadows. All of them give +2/+2. Hope gives you death rattle, return this minion to your hand. Life is lifesteal, purity is divine shield, and shadows is, it gives you 1/1 copy. Now I think each of them can be quite effective. The problem with them is that each of them are effective in different situations and on different minions. And I'm not sure if you can build your deck so that you have targets for everything in it. So Death Rattle, return this minion to your hand is obviously great for cards with a great battle cry effect, like N'Zoth or something like that. Getting that back to your hand and playing it again would be very strong. Lifesteal is probably the weakest effect of them, but in certain situations you have a big body on the board, you put this on and then you heal yourself for a lot. Can be nice. But I think this is essentially the weakest. Same with Divine Shield. If you have a board state where you can really abuse the Divine Shield mechanic, then it's awesome. If not, then it's not that strong. And give a minion +2/+2, summon a 1/1 copy of it is obviously great for Death Rattle minions or end of turn effects. So like Ysera or the Lich King. All in all, I think this card is interesting. It has a nice effect, but it's too unpredictable, I think. And it's too difficult to build your deck in a way that you can really benefit from every one of these elixirs. So yeah, all in all, I don't think that this card is going to see too much play. Gather your party, 6 mana, recruit a minion, so we had the recruit effect already here. But in this case, there's no limitations, it just recruits a minion. I don't think that this is that good, because it seems like a big priest only in Warrior, and Warrior could probably pull off a big priest style, because, well, priest can pull it off because they have a lot of removal spells, so they can survive the early game without actually playing minions. Warrior could do the same with spells and weapons and gaining armor, but Gather Your Party is, I think, the worst version of that. And you don't have resummoning your dead minions in Warrior. Gather Your Party is the worst version of what Priest has to offer because it's more expensive, you don't get the interaction with your graveyard, and you pull the minion away from your deck. So big Priest, and those are more like control decks, and there you don't really want your deck to be smaller, because it's not really a combo deck where you're looking for a specific combo. You're looking for as many huge threats as possible, and you essentially overwhelm your opponent with too many huge threats that they can't remove. And this doesn't help you that much with it. So, not that much of a fan. Marin the Fox, 8 mana, 6/6, which is pretty bad. Battlecry, summon a 0/8 treasure chest for your opponent. Break it for awesome loot. Now everybody's going to get this card for free. And what it does is, this is the Master Chest. Death Rattle, give your opponent fantastic treasure. You are the opponent because this is on your opponent's side, so you're not going to giving your opponent treasure. You get one of these 3 cards when you destroy that. Talon's Goblet, Wondrous Wand, Zarok's Crown, or the Golden Kobold. Talon's Goblet, draw a card, fill your hand with copies of it. That seems extremely strong depending on what you pull. I mean, it's never going to be really terrible, or almost never going to be terrible. I think the vast majority of cards in your deck, you're probably going to be happy if you have more of them. Not always the case, but most of the time. Wondrous Wand, draw 3 cards, reduce their cost to 0. That is a very volatile card. It can be insane if you draw 3 high cost cards, can be pretty much useless if you draw a backstab, and a 1-drop. Then you have essentially, not done much. Xeroc's Crown, discover a legendary minion, summon 2 copies of it. Now this is, in the vast majority of cases, going to give you something good. 2 legendaries for 3 mana, most of the time this is going to be, there are more than 3 really crappy legendaries, so there are going to be situations where you get offered crap, and crap, but that's going to be rare. So generally this is going to be a good card. And the Golden Kobold is a 3 mana 6/6 taunt, which is good. And the battle cries replace your hand with legendary minions, so it's like the smaller version of the Golden Monkey. Ideally, from the experience with the Golden Monkey, you want to... This enables you to run a deck with lots of situational and techie cards, and if you don't use them and you can't play them, then you turn them into useful cards later on. The problem with this is you get one of these at random, so you can't really build your deck around sometime getting the Golden Kobold because you don't know if you're going to get it. You can't build your deck around any of these cards because you never know which one you're going to get. And the Master Chest, you have to destroy it, so ideally you do something like turn 8 and then you flip its values and it dies instantly, or you do that at turn 10. But that takes a lot for a card that is potentially quite good, but also potentially not that useful. I think this is very much a fun card, and as a promo card, BlizzCon promo card, that's generally what it's for. It's supposed to be a fun card, and I'm going to play around with it for sure, but I don't think that it's good. In fact, I think it's actually pretty bad. Crushing Walls. 7 mana, destroy your opponent's left and rightmost minions. I don't think that this is really going to see play because it's a 7 mana hunter card that doesn't kill the opponent. And why would you play that in hunter? Sure, there are some people always trying to, or including me, to make a control hunter viable, but it's just not really happening because, well, there are too few cards to support that, and the hero power just screams aggro, and the hero power is only useful in aggro. This changes a bit with the Deathstalker, but still, control hunter is not really there. And even if it is there, this is quite expensive. Sure, it can kill 2 minions, and if there is a deck where your opponent has to choose his positioning very, very carefully because there's Crushing Walls and Explosive Shot and stuff like that, could be interesting, but I just don't see where it would fit into Hunter. That's my main problem with this card. And the last is the Dragon's Soul, 3 mana, 0/3. After you cast 3 spells at a turn, summon a 5/5 dragon, and this is Priest. Now, the fact that it's a dragon is, at least so far, completely irrelevant, because dragon interaction only happens with dragons in your hand. So it's just a 5/5. The only thing that it's important for is Dragonfire Potion. But apart from that, it's a 5/5. Casting 3 spells in a turn as a priest is doable. Priest has enough cheap spells that they can do that, and there's Lyra who can help with that. How often would you have to do that for this to be good? I'm not sure. I mean, if you really have to go out of your way to cast 3 spells and you're essentially burning spells pointlessly to summon the 5/5 dragon, it's not that good, I think. But if you have a deck and board states where you want to cast your 3 spells anyway in a turn, then it's pretty good because it's a free upside. You would have cast those 3 spells anyway, and yeah, you just get a free dragon on top of that. So I think this is definitely more potential than Aluneth, but I'm not too convinced. And there's always a problem if it is really good and more people start to run weapons, then more weapon removal will be played, and then this will be crap. So yeah, that's the cards so far. I'm pretty excited for Marin the Fox, even though he's really bad, but I think he's going to be fun. And apart from that, Carnivorous Cube is my favorite. It's one I really want to play around with. And the rest, yeah, the recruit mechanic, we're going to have to see. The upgrade mechanic can be pretty good. Rin is a nice idea, but I think way too expensive and too slow. And yeah, that's it so far. I'm Kamaleao. Have a good time.